Airports and zombies are like bread and butter. For some reason, writers, directors, and developers love including airports in their zombie apocalypse story. But naturally, this sparks a pretty big debate on whether airports are good or not in a zombie apocalypse. Now, most of my subscribers say that it's a pretty bad idea, but I want to find out if it really is or not. So today, we're going to find the pros and cons of surviving in an airport and see whether or not if it's a good idea or a big mistake. This is Zombie Survival Labs. Airports, a place you go to go somewhere else, and to get a free prostate exam courtesy of the TSA. The TSA, giving free prostate exams since 9/11. Airports have a massive amount of people coming and going. With an average of 44,000 passengers a day, restaurants, mini hotels, pools, gift shops, gyms, movie theaters, and the facilities to keep all of those luxuries running. It almost sounds like a survivor's paradise, except for the 44,000 people. That sounds like a living nightmare. So could an airport be good in a zombie apocalypse? Looks like I'm on a watch list now. Better change my IP address to somewhere where flight security doesn't matter that much. There we go. Now, let's talk about airports. To figure out if airports are good or not in a zombie apocalypse, we first need to find the pros and the cons. But why even ask such a silly question? Zombies don't exist. Well, preparing for a zombie apocalypse follows the same guidelines as preparing for any other realistic apocalyptic scenario, like the solar grid collapsing or a pandemic. So by preparing for a zombie apocalypse, you are also preparing for a realistic doomsday scenario. And now that I have momentarily gone ghost for my designated FBI agent, let's talk about some of the pros to surviving in an airport during a zombie apocalypse. Whether you are camping or surviving a doomsday scenario, shelter is always the first thing that should be on your checklist. Not only does shelter put up a literal barrier between you and the zombies, but it also protects you from realistic dangers, like the elements. It keeps you dry when it rains and warm when it's cold. Oftentimes when talking about a doomsday scenario, most people forget the biggest threat of them all, Mother Nature. But not like how Delusional Dave from my last video believes it is, where you have to drink your own urine and ask Mother Nature if it's safe to eat unknown berries.
Mother Nature, is it best I eat these? It's like, yes. I have no idea what they are.
What I mean is that Mother Nature is not forgiving. Mother Nature's not going to all of a sudden warm up and stop raining on you simply because you asked nicely. So the first thing that you need to be looking for when you're deciding to settle down or not is, does this place have shelter? Which an airport does. But that's only a third of the triangle. You also have food and water to worry about as well. Since airports don't grow their own food and rely solely on shipped food, whether that be fast food in the food court or for convenience stands where people can buy chips and bottled water while they wait for their flight. Until you're able to get a farm up and running, you're going to be reliant on the food that you find. And an airport has plenty of food that you can find. The good news is that airports have a lot of food. The bad news is that majority of that food that's considered healthy is going to end up spoiling. This being the meats, breads, and vegetables that would be used for the restaurants or flights. But the sheer amount of food and bottled water that they have in the back storage rooms are why I'm going to be leaving this on the list. But for any place to be sustainable for long-term survivability, you are going to need adequate space for yourself. A place to put all the supplies that you find, put farmland down, a place for everyone to sleep, eat, piss, and drink. Nonetheless though, when it comes to space, airports have a lot of it. Like about on average 9 square kilometers of space, or 96 million square feet for my American friends. I'm not talking about your small airstrips in rural areas, nor am I talking about your super gigantic Atlantic Jackson airport. I want to find the average and talk about that. Now regardless, 96 million square feet is a lot of goddamn space. Most of that though is for the airstrips and has open field. So it looks like you're gonna have a ton of space to make your own Ohio corn. But not only are you gonna have a ton of space outside, you're also gonna have a ton of space inside. I mean, this is your average airport, meaning that they're serving thousands of people daily. You're gonna have waiting areas for departures, lobbies, gates, restaurants, shops, hangars, security offices, restaurants, and much more. You are going to need a way to secure and protect this place though. Obviously, because of events that happened in the past, airports have a way of securing themselves. They might be simple security methods in an apocalyptic situation, but it's security methods nonetheless. At each of the boarding wings, it's common to find folding security gates. This allows you to open and close parts of the airport at will. It also can stop people from getting farther into the airport. Since airports typically only have one entrance, this means that when danger starts arising, you can just retreat farther back into the airport. But one of the best security methods that you're going to have at your disposal are the air traffic control towers, which also doubles as a vantage point. Because the surrounding area of an airport is mostly airstrips and open fields, the air traffic control towers are going to allow you to see for miles if potential threats are coming your way. And you're going to need that security because airports have a lot of supplies. If you thought that malls would have a lot of supplies like I talked about in my last video, airports by far have them beat. First off, airports have planes. I know, revolutionary discovery. But that means that those planes need to be regularly maintained. You're going to need transportation on the airstrips, general sanitary and cleaning supplies in the airport. You're going to have beds and luxuries for the hotels inside the airports, electrical equipment in the security gear, medical supplies for sick passengers or injured passengers, cooking supplies that are going to be found in the restaurants. But there's one thing that most people forget about when talking about airports: the confiscated goods. All the time, every day around the world, people try and board a plane with items that they're not supposed to be bringing on the plane. Whether that be guns, blades, pharmaceuticals, fun pharmaceuticals, herbs, seeds, electrical gear, and more. It turns out that a lot of the things that they end up accumulating either goes in the back where they'll end up destroying it later on, or where they'll auction it off. And it turns out that airports tend to auction off a lot of guns. Who still thinks you can bring guns on airplanes? That's just crazy thinking. So not only do airports have a lot of supplies, they have a larger variety of supplies than most malls would. However, where there are good things, there are bad things that follow. What are the cons to surviving in an airport during a zombie apocalypse? A lot of people commented that airports would be a hotspot during a zombie apocalypse. Hotspots are places the common public would seek out during an apocalyptic situation, typically places like grocery stores or hospitals. This is because the purposes of those places serve for survival. However, airports aren't known for food, for supplies, or for treatment, or anything really that is attached to survival. They're known for getting you to point A to point B via sky. But many people say that that is exactly why it's a hotspot, because people would be trying to flee in the case of an apocalyptic situation. Airports are typically one of the first places to close down anytime there is a pandemic situation going on, as the coronavirus has taught us. And if people aren't able to buy tickets because the airport is closed, or if they don't know how to even fly a plane, they really don't have a reason for going to the airport anymore. But there still is a way that it could be considered a hotspot that not a whole lot of people were mentioning. Airports are alternative care sites. During a pandemic, since airports are one of the first places to close down, airports still remain open to be alternative care sites, meaning that they find a new purpose by treating the infected. Airports are going to begin using their vast space of hangars and inside facilities to start housing and treating the infected. And any place that groups the infected obviously will put you at a greater risk of being infected if you were to head to that place. Which means that since it's an alternative care site, it also doubles as a hotspot now. Another con that you're going to be running into is that airports have way too much space in them to effectively secure and protect. There's 96 million square feet that you're not only going to need to secure, but also constantly oversee and protect, which not only welcomes a lot of mistakes, but it also welcomes a lot of blind spots. The security of an airport also comes into question because it's damn near made out of windows. I mean, I get it. People like watching airplanes take off and land. But when society collapses, people also like throwing rocks at windows. The security of a place greatly depends on the walls and entrances to that place. If your one way in is also your one way out, it's an easy way to get trapped inside. However, if people can just make new ways in by throwing a rock at a window, it completely destroys your security methods altogether. But then you also have the fact that airports are in high traffic areas, which by proxy also puts it in densely populated areas. Airports are designed to bring people in and take people out. So it's a smart business decision to put airports in areas where people are typically going to want to go, being tourist locations in large cities. And because we're talking about an apocalyptic situation, this means that you have a greater risk of running into desperate people that are willing to do desperate things, thus increasing your chances of becoming infected. And when preparing for an apocalyptic scenario or a doomsday scenario, a rule of thumb is to always avoid high population areas, which are typically where airports are found. So now that we have the pros and the cons of surviving in an airport during a zombie apocalypse, what would I rate it on a scale of 1 to 10? 1 being a completely dog-ass idea, and 10 being indefinite long-term survival. By weighing the pros and the cons, I would have to give airports a solid 4 on this scale. This is a place that is going to be much better served as a place for short-term survival. A place that you can hold out for a little bit until you find somewhere better to go to. Or it could just be used as a supply run. But I'm curious what some of you guys have said, so let's read some comments. Airport security means you could get some weapons, plus planes always have food and beverages, so they gotta have a stash of that somewhere. See, I'm more interested in the mini bottles of Jack. Planes would be far too risky to use with how loud they are, combined with the need for trained pilots, maintenance crews, and resources, and supplying them doesn't make it worth it to me. That's true. Also, the minute you landed, you'd be signaling to everyone else where you are. Pro, all of the neck rests and tiny bags of pretzels you can handle. I would have to get pretty desperate before eating those stale-ass pretzels they serve on planes. However, neck pillows. Sorry I couldn't think of anything for a pro or con, but I hope you were having fun making these videos. Keep up the good work. Hopefully the new series I'm doing, Doomsday Poopers, link in the description, will be a nice break from editing these. And also, thank you. And a big thank you to all the people that have became members. It's greatly appreciated. And if you also want your comments read at the end of the videos, make sure you hit that join button down below. Here you can watch the episode of Doomsday Pooper where Dave is going to die. He's going to die in a doomsday scenario, and you should watch it to see why, because he's delusional. Anyway, thank you for watching. My name's Tyler, and I'll see you guys later.
Turning into hell.
I get this feeling that his visions are going to be something that's oddly specific and happens frequently to the islands of Hawaii.
I'm prepping for a catastrophic tsunami.